Hi, goalies. I'm Brian Daccord, and I'm joined here with Steve Brown, and welcome to the Fuel Podcast. Steve, this is going to be a hard one. I tell you this, you may get some broken tables and chairs on this one. We're going to talk about coaches.
Okay.
And, oh boy, tough subject for me. It's a struggle every day, every week. I have to deal with all the parents and the kids and the situations with the coaches. And, it's funny. I'm going to start off with the saying that I have to say all the time, right, to the coaches, to the parents about the coaches. Predictable unpredictability. Use that all the time. And the issue, let's say, from a parent standpoint, when stuff happens with the coach, is they try to reason things out. And I always stop them. I'm like, there you go again. You're speaking logically. You're speaking like this makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, you can't, as a parent of a goalie, you can't expect things to be a certain way. Because the coaches aren't generally goalies. And if they are, they forgot what it meant to be a goalie and all the everything that goes into it. But for me, that's what I have to try to explain right off the bat, that it's not logical. You can't reason things out. And you know that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? You could use the same analogy for goalies and coaches. Like, we don't speak the same language. When I start talking like this, right? Yeah. Like, what's the first? Well, like, what's going through your brain right now?
Well, I guess I think I have more questions. Right?
Okay.
Than like, and so I guess the first one is I mean, you've been in both roles.
Yes.
Right? Like, so when you think about unpredictability, like, what does that mean to you? Like, as a coach, and then what does that mean as a parent?
Okay, so I think what happens is that as parents, you expect things. Okay. You expect courtesy, right? Mm-hmm. You expect some form of professionalism. You expect opportunity.
Okay.
All right. And so let me put some examples to that.
Sure.
Okay. You're playing junior hockey. U18, whatever. Maybe not the highest junior league, but you're playing here in New England, you're playing junior U18 club, whatever. So the coach doesn't tell the goalies who's playing till they get to the rink, and half hour before the game, they'll say, okay, you're playing. So you know what that means? That means the parents don't know whether to come or not. Mm-hmm. Do you have the grandparents come? Does the sister come? Like, do you make that 2-hour drive from Boston to Springfield, mm-hmm. not knowing whether your kid's playing or not? Because the coach says, well, you never know if I have to make a switch. And therefore, I need both goalies thinking that they're playing so that they're ready. If I pull one, the other one's ready to go. Mm-hmm. But they have no idea that you're probably 10 times better off not thinking you're playing and coming in relaxed and not having spent any of the mental energy that goes into pregame anxiety. Right? So how do you explain to a parent, just this example,
sure,
why the coach can't even let your kid know whether he's playing or not, so he can let his parents or girlfriend or friends or whatever know? Mm-hmm. Answer me that one.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it really impacts trust. right? In that regard, right? Like,
well, there is none.
Right. You know what I mean?
There is none. Yeah,
And it's trust on in that scenario, like the player, right? Because I would like to know, I like expectations. I'd like to have clear expectations.
Yeah.
And then trust on the parents. And then you think about, as a coach, you have some control, but you don't have control over the dinner table and what's being said in the car ride back or the dinner table, right? And that could have an influence too.
Yeah.
Right. So if the trust is broken between parents and coach, right, then there's another communication system. You got another feedback loop going back to the athlete, right, or to the goalie. That's one of disconnection, right?
And that once again, that feedback, that loop, it's so funny. Your expectations are, you'd be able to have that conversation or ask about it, but in the goalie world, it's almost like if you ask, you question, right? So when we get into just on this matter, and I'll say it right now, from a youth hockey perspective, I tell goalie parents that when everything's all honky-dory and the tryouts and they want you to spend the $7,000 for your kid to play on this team, right? They want you. That's the time you have to have the discussion what the expectations are. We're going to rotate the goalies every game. We're play to win. Whoever plays better is playing. We're rotating, but if it comes to playoffs or tournaments, we play the better goalie.
Sure.
We're rotating, except we're not rotating every single game. We'll play 50-50, but if I think a goalie's better, he'll play the better,
Sure.
Whatever it is. And I tell coaches, I don't care what it is. I'm done fighting with you on what it should be. But have the conversation when everything's good, and then send an email. Not like there's a contract.
Sure.
But I tell the parents, you have that conversation, and the coach says, we're playing, both goalies are going to play 50% of the games, but tournaments are mine, and playoffs are mine, and I'm playing the best goalie. So you write an email, hey coach, thanks for the talk. John is excited to play for the team. Just so we're on the same page, the goalies are both going to play equally except for tournaments and playoffs, and this is what you explain. Just so it's out there. Because I've seen it 100 times. When it hits the fan, when you get that tournament and it's Sunday morning and you're in the semifinals, and Johnny gets there with his family and the parents are there, they brought the grandparents, the uncle came to go see Johnny play, they brought the family dog, and then Johnny's not playing. Then you have the incident in the parking lot after the game. That's when you have the incident. And I've seen so many times where things don't go the way it should. The coaches this is the way it was explained. This is the deal, or whatever. If you at least have that email, you have, as a parent, you have the peace of mind that, you know what? This was the way it was explained. This is the way I understood it, and I regurgitated it back to the coach. It won't matter at the end. It won't matter. The coach is going to do what he's going to do. But at least there's some kind of, hey, when you get to the expectations.
It's right? Peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
On it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we had an agreement, right? This is what we bought into, right? And literally, depending on team, you bought into, right? You paid for, or you thought was part of the transaction or part of that process, and that you thought that's what it was going to be like, right? Which makes it easier for you to walk away too, right? Like, maybe not,
yes,
right? But it also it makes it easier for you to make decisions down the road without putting the impact on you, right? Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, there's no guilt there,
right?
If you have done that,
like, I actually did what I had to do, and this is the way it was explained, and that's kind of, for me, one of the things that help, like at the youth hockey level.
Sure.
So as sad as it is, it's so hard with the goalies, and it's so difficult. I used to say I went through this phase somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. I went through this phase of, you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm tired of goalies showing up at games not knowing whether they're playing or not.
Yeah.
I'm tired about goalies spending $7,000 to join a youth hockey organization, and they're supposed to provide goalie skills every week, and they don't provide goalie skills. And the parents paid the $7,000, and at the end of the day, they don't get goalie skills, and now they're a pain in the ass because they're saying, well, we paid $7,000. Where are the goalie skills? Where's the goalie coach? And I'm paying $7,000, and why am I 13 years old? Why is my son 13 years old or my daughter's 13 years old and they're a backup goalie?
It's a big commitment.
So there's so much, and so I went through this phase of goalies, stand up for yourselves, right? Like, if they say you're gonna have a goalie coach and they don't, well, call the organization on the carpet. Where's the goalie coach? If they say you're playing 50%, call the coach on the carpet. I want my 50%. You said I'm playing 50%, I want my 50%, right? And I've gone totally away from that. Don't even come close.
How come?
Because in all reality, in all practicality, all that does when you try to fight City Hall, when you try to fight the system and try to get what was promised or what it was supposed to be, you're the bad guy. The parents, the goalies are painted. When you ask, when you say something, you get painted. And then when you get painted with that brush, that also radiates. Well, that parent's a nutcase. That kid's a pain in the ass. That's what happens.
Yeah.
So I've gone away from telling parents to stand up for themselves. I don't think you can win standing up for yourself. I don't think your cost-benefit analysis. I'm going to use the cost-benefit analysis, saying it's not good for you. If you go sign up for this goalie camp, and that goalie camp's going to have that coach and this former NHL goalie and this, and you're going to get 5 hours of ice a day for 5 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get there, and there's no NHL goalie coach or former goalie, and you're not getting 5 hours a day of training. You're getting 2 hours, whatever it is. Don't complain. Don't complain. Just don't go back. Take your lumps. You lost. You signed up with this organization. You came in with the expectations of X, Y, and Z, and you're not getting it. Suck it up. Get through the year, and go play somewhere else. And don't let them know when you leave either. Don't complain, because if you're the guy that complains, then you get painted as the bad kid or the bad parent.
So actions speak louder than words.
Absolutely.
And avoid the label of being that kid or that family.
Absolutely.
Because the labels, and we think about this in society as a greater whole, the label that you carry, the label that someone bestows upon you, becomes hard to kind of get away from.
Absolutely. You can't, to me, and as sad as it sounds, I don't want it to be that way. But I think that's part of going through, I've always said that you've got to go through the crap. To be a goalie, you've got to go through adversity. You'll never get to where you want to be without facing adversity, without getting pulled, without getting cut, without getting sat on the bench, without, you know what I mean? Without that stuff. So I look at this scenario the same way. I look at it, okay, there's a situation that, whether it's a camp or a team or whatever, that doesn't go. that's part of embracing the grind, right?
Yeah.
Where you've got to look past it. Am I out there, or like how does that strike you when I say that as a non-goalie or a non-goalie parent?
I think,
which you may be at some point. I'm telling you.
You never know.
Yes. Right? Yeah.
I think you're trying to play a long game, right? Like you're trying to say, okay, there's a short game, right? There's your initial emotion reaction, right?
Yeah.
And what's best in this situation, right? I think all these are valuable teaching points, right? Like I think all along the way, any adversity we have, whether we be a parent or whether we be an athlete, they're all teachable moments, right? So as a parent, if I have a son that thought he was getting a 50-50 share, and it's really something like 80-20, right? And they're on the 20 end, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how do I, again, kind of going back to control, what can you take out of this, right? It isn't a favorable situation, right? But what can your son or daughter do, right, to try to change that, right? Where can they place an emphasis? And then what can you do as a parent? What can you control, right? Do you want to burn bridges, right? Which is, I think, what you're alluding to is that's not the best way to do it, right?
No matter how you do it, to me, no matter how you do it, it's like you're burning a bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so then it becomes, you kind of think about it, right? You ask yourself the hard questions, right? Like, and you start to go in as a parent even, what about this is making me so frustrated? What about this, and more than likely it's because we had an agreement and that's not panning out. Mm. Well, then you have a choice the following year, right, to do something different, right? And you kind of mentioned, hey, walk away, don't tell.
Walk away. Find another opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that those
leave on good terms.
And those are all within control. And if we're trying to, as parents, model what we want in our children, right? Yeah. Like, so you think about it, the parent who.
But don't you want your children to stand up for themselves?
Yeah, right. But then it becomes this issue of how do you stand up for yourself, right? And in what manner, right? Mm-hmm. So, are you overreactive with it, right? Are you overreacting to something, underreacting? Is your response surprising you, right? Like, should you be kind of like angry, but you're kind of like annoyed? You know what I mean? There's different like thought themes there with that one. And I think you, in those situations of stress, right? Because our children don't usually see us under that stuff, right? Like usually you kind of hide that.
And it's stressful for the parents.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so I think it's a good way to kind of model what adversity looks like. Just like, I know in a previous podcast we talked about what's it like.
Hey kid, you're in the middle of this.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of adversity right now. That's what this is.
Yeah, and what's it like in the previous podcast we talked about what's it like for you to be the backup goalie? How do you feel there, right? So how can you grow in that situation to be there, to kind of feel that way? Then also to know that you're and I go back to the goalie in that you're not your parents either, right? So they're doing their thing over here, but you can still be a good teammate. You can still be good, right? Don't get disconnected, right? Because I see that all the time when I talk to the kids, right?
It's a good word. Disconnected.
That as the parents and organization kind of butt heads, it becomes an easy out for the player to feel disconnected, right? And then they back away, they become withdrawn, right? They start to shy away, right? And they stop doing those things that promote them getting closer and closer every day, right? Yeah. What you would like to be able to do as a parent is, if there is a question or concern with the organization, is that we'll take care of it on this end, right? But you still put in all your focus and energy into that, right? Because otherwise you're hurting yourself for the next year, right? Yeah. And I think that's the message that I think as all parents you would want, right? Like they'd want their child to know, hey, be resilient, persevere, right? In those pieces.
It's so funny. Like I've lived it myself with one of my guys, right? Where went to a team and was explained this was he's older and went to a team and it was a split season team. And here was the deal. This is how the goalies are going to work. Awesome. Sounds good. season starts, and I remember taking him to a game where he didn't play, and got there, and the coach is like, the other goalie's playing this college is here to see him play. That wasn't the deal, right? And it was well, I was like, oh, okay. What happened to the way it was supposed to be? And so it was good for me to experience it,
sure,
firsthand with my kid, because I deal with it all the time with parents. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I have, what I think that is really hard for parents to understand, is that things change and a coach's mentality changes. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm going to muddy this up as much as possible because I don't want to have any reference to anybody. So I set up a goalie with a team. And the idea was, the coach said, you know what, we're going to see how it goes. And once I get him here, he's going to be young. I've got my returner or whatever. But, we'll give him up till Christmas. And then up at Christmas, then I'll decide whether I'll keep him for the following year or whether I'm going to go out and go get another goalie. Okay. Early October, I get a phone call from the coach. Hey, Dak, looking for a goalie, need a starter next year. Do you have anybody in mind? I'm like, Coach, I'm the guy that sent you the goalie you got now that you told me you were going to give till Christmas.
Yeah.
So he literally just forgot, just whatever. He was already going to get his next goal, and it was October. I moved on. And it had nothing to do with how he had played. It wasn't like, oh, he didn't play. It was just like, go get it. Yeah, it's gonna. So in his mind, at that period when I was talking the year before, setting it up, oh yeah, well, we'll get him in there and we'll see how. And then he had changed his mind at some point and forgot that he had done this whole thing. I had a coach that sent the goalie to, and I said, I just need to know how it's going to work. He goes, I'm going to have 3 goalies. And here's how it's going to work. First guy gets the first game. Your guy's getting the second game. Other guy's getting the third game. So your kid's playing the second game. Absolutely fine. All right. So at least we know he's going to. So I sit down with the parents and say, here's the deal. There's going to be 3 goalies. There's going to be 3 exhibition games before the season starts. He's going to get the second one. Fine. He goes. 3 exhibition games, doesn't play. I call the coach. Hey, very nicely, not confrontational whatsoever. Hey, I thought we had talked about this and agreed on he's going to play the second game.
Yeah.
Whoa! Coach goes off. I'm like, look, I'm not being confrontational. Mm-hmm. I'm just asking why it didn't happen.
Sure.
And then he calmed down, and then but he was so offended.
Yeah, he got defensive.
And so defensive that there was no gray area. This is what he told me was going to happen, and it didn't happen. Like, there was no gray area whatsoever. But I deal with this all the time, and I can empathize with goalie parents and goalies that go into a situation and it isn't the way they had expected to go.
So I'm thinking of, I had a professor in college who was talking about divorces, right?
Okay.
And talking about why relationships and he said that it's not that people grow apart from each other, it's that their needs change, right?
Okay.
And that when I'm thinking about the relationship between parents and coaches, at one point they both need each other, right? The coach needs the athlete, the parents need the team, right? And then at one point, at some level, the needs change, right?
Could be more or less.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so when that need changes, the dynamic changes, right? And if one's pushing too hard or one's pulling too hard, and I mean, you can think about this in like a romantic or a friendship relationship. If one person's kind of taking too much, pushing one way, the relationship breaks down, right? And that kind of sounds like what happens a lot of times in some of the issues that the needs have changed.
Because the needs, you're right, the needs change.
Mm-hmm. And
all of a sudden the coach feels he needs to win or he needs to play the other kid it changes, and then the story changes.
Absolutely, right? And so that's where communication's important, right? That's where...
But there's no communication.
Right, and so
that's the problem.
And so in an ideal world, there's transparency and communication, especially when you get...
in a normal world.
Especially when you get to an organizational level, right? Like where there's like this... where there's a transaction involved with like cost, right? Like, and I think it's a little bit different maybe on like a team, right? But you're still making that decision, right? Based off of an expectation.
You're making that decision to go to that school or go to that organization.
Based off of an expectation.
Exactly.
My question
that doesn't get met.
Yeah, and my question for you would be, as a coach, what's a reasonable, like if I'm a parent or I'm thinking about talking to a coach, right? If you were the coach, right? What would be the reasonable expectation on your end? Right?
Yeah.
So
the reasonable expectation is if the coach doesn't want it, he's going to push back, and it's just going to go bad. That's it. Like you're talking about the high school level or the prep school level or the junior level or the college level. Like, don't even bother. Like I don't see it. Like once again, it comes into that you have to eat it, whether it's as unjust as could be. Because you see it one way, Mars and Venus again. So I did one of the primers not too long ago, and it was about. I said, when I hear a goalie tells me that they had a meeting with the coach about playing time, I cringe. That was my primer. And the reason is because when a goalie's not happy with his playing time and he goes in to see the coach, like nothing good is going to come out of that meeting. And if the goalie, and please, whatever you do, goalies, take this. Never bring up the other goalie in your meeting. If you have a meeting with the coach and you're talking, is that cardinal rule number one? Do not bring up anybody else. That meeting is 1,000% about you. Mm-hmm. Is that a real thing, 1,000%? I don't think so. So at the end of the day, you have that meeting. I tell them not to. Because I go to you and I go, hey, Coach Steve, why aren't I playing? And you sit there going, well, your rebound control wasn't good last game. And you make up.
Sure.
Like all you want to do is say to me, I want to win next game and I think the other kid's going to get me the win and you're not. That's all you want to say, right? Sure. At the end of the day, however you came to that reason, who cares? And you speak one language, and I speak another. Like, and God forbid if you try to speak, like if you try to speak, French right now with me, I'd be like, huh? What? Like we speak different languages. So tell me your opinion about this, because this is what I said in the primer, and this is what I tell kids all the time. You're not happy with your playing time at the right time. You slide over to the coach, practice, whatever. Hey, coach, I'm feeling great. Anytime the team needs me, I'm ready to play. Go on your way. What do you think?
I don't think that's a bad thing to say, right? Like, and I don't know. I think it all depends on the coach too, right? Because you're dealing with personality. Yeah. You're dealing with...
But it's non-confrontational.
Yeah.
You're not questioning the other guys. You're pulling the team. Whenever the team needs me, I'm ready. Has nothing to do with the other goalie, right? And it saves you a half hour of bullcrap.
So my only pushback on that would be this. What if the athlete isn't self-aware, right?
It picks the wrong time.
Doesn't know that there's a glaring deficiency, or doesn't know there's things that they need to work on, right? I'm a coach. You come tell me you're ready to play. As a coach, I don't think you're technically ready, right? Or I don't think you've been playing well in practice, right? You tell me you're ready to play. I get that your intent and your passion and your why's there, right? But maybe that kind of creates a hurdle where now I'm going to be like, we haven't done X, Y, Z, right?
But most in the world that we live in, most head coaches, it's not about the X, Y, Z. You know, they couldn't tell you the difference between a VH and an RVH. Like they wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like they don't speak the same language. I would say that is the conversation with the goalie coach.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
Hey, what can I do to get better? I'm okay with it.
Well, I think as long as you're having that conversation with somebody, right? And if it is the goalie coach, right? Positional coach, right? In any sport, if that's the case, then just making sure that, like, hey, you're literally priming the coach to know that you're ready.
And that, you're exactly. You're just letting, I think every once in a while, because here's the thing that I find. If you're the backup goalie, or you haven't played for a while or whatever, if you don't say anything, it's awesome for them. You don't have to deal with it, right? And then it's like having that meeting. Anything you say in the meeting, and once again, I've heard this 100 times over. The coach will say, well, he said this, or he said that, or she said that. Like it's not like anything that they can extract from that meeting to help their case of why that goalie isn't playing, that's what they're going to do. They're going to pull whatever it could be, right? So that's why if you go and have that meeting this isn't about what you need to work on, this is about playing time.
Sure.
Right? If you have that meeting about playing time, whatever you say will be held against you. This is my practical experience of doing this for 20 plus years, right? It's like what you're going to say is going to be held against you, and how they see it. It's not a fair conversation. Speak different languages, and that's why. If you don't say anything, to the coach, they don't care. He hasn't even come to see me, right?
Sure.
I love that one.
I would say that one.
Geez, he hasn't played in 3 weeks, hasn't said a word. Well, yeah, because you want the kid to be a good teammate and not saying, and go work hard and wait for his opportunity. But they can use that against you, in my experience. They can use, if you don't, once in a while, give the coach, hey, I want to freaking play. If you don't give them that, let them off the hook that easy.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
A little, is that fair? It's a little bit of that, right? Because if you don't, then it goes the other way. Well, it doesn't really want to play. Doesn't say a word, just comes to practice every day and leaves.
I think that speaks to a bigger picture thing, right? What is like, to me, it's about coaches in general and players, right? And that really at the crux of a player coach is the relationship, right? Mm-hmm. And that coaches who are invested in relationships, right? Even if the goalie isn't, they're not fully aware of all the technical pieces that go into it. They couldn't run goalie through practice, right? Even if it's not their specialty, right? Yeah. That it's not about the X's and O's necessarily, as it is about the relationships and forming connections, right? And being that person that brings the team together. That I think it's more about those relationships, right? Like if I care about you, right? If I'm a coach, right? And I let you know that I care about you, then there's a space for having that conversation, right? And there's a space for the athlete to the coach and feel comfortable in that, right? Like, so if I know that as an athlete that you care about me. If I know that, first of all, if I know I'm safe, right?
Yeah.
If I know you care about me, and I know any feedback you give me is going to be around me trying to be better, right? And trying to get me better, well, then I'm going to be willing to do a lot more stuff, right? And I'm going to be willing to trust you. And I think coaches have a role, especially the head coach, in creating that culture from the top down, right? Now, it might not be the coach that if your positional coach is obviously someone that you're going to spend more time with, right? It's obviously someone who you're going to have a different relationship with, probably a more closer relationship. But I do think that there is a piece to the head coach that, you know, you need to be able to know your players, right? And you need to be able to know them beyond just, and I know this becomes hard at some levels, right? But you do need to know who they are outside of just a hockey player too, right? And the more more you know that, the easier it is for you to connect with people, right? And because at the end of the day, it's about relationships and connection, right? Your ability to coach would come down to that. Your ability to deal with parents would come down to your ability to maintain relationships and have connections.
That's why I think, like, for me, in terms of the next frontier of you know, goaltending, is coaching education, right? It is the understanding, like, the coach that, look, at 12 years old says, well, it's better for goalies to play full games. It's better for the team. It's better for the goalies. Fine. That's the way that's the way they feel. That's okay. You can argue that. But the parent of that goalie has to bring his kid to the game and not play at 12 years old. Mm-hmm. But that coach brings his kid to the game. He plays every game, right?
Sure.
So he doesn't live in the world of what a goalie parent lives in. Mm-hmm. You know, he's like, oh, it's better you're a goalie. Come to the game, drive from Boston to Springfield, sit on the bench, drive home, take 6 hours out of your Sunday not to play a sporting event, and you're 12 years old. But so we've got to educate, well, that's what's happening. Would you do that for your son? And if you did, would you like to know which game he's playing or not? You know, like, well, just some of the courtesies that could go along.
And that's absolutely, like, that makes sense, right? Because then you're like, if it's about relationships, right? Then if you put the focus as a coach on relationships, right? And I don't mean that in the absence of you're not developing players, if you're not trying to win.
You get into the more than, you know, who you are and not what you do. Like, we're getting right back to that again, right?
Yeah, you're
like,
not
treat the kid for who he is.
Yeah, and if you can do
the parents
that, and if you do that, then you look at the world and you look at your team through a different lens, right? Mm-hmm. If I care about you as a person, well, then maybe that thought pops in your head a little bit more about splitting. You're going to get the second period, right? Somebody else can get first and third, but you're going to get the second, right? Or you're going to get the third, right?
Whatever it's going to be. Just communicate it. Yeah,
whatever the split is, right? Yeah. Like that there's some sort of thought into that, and it's just a little bit more social intelligence, right? It's emotional intelligence at that point, right? Because now it's, I care about you, and this is how, as a team, we can grow.
And I think, you know, if you take one thing out of this podcast, from a coach's standpoint, I think that's it. I think it's the take the hockey out and just have that communication. Like, you know, the treat the goalies like people, parents like people. You know what I mean? Like, have a little bit of, what do you call it? Something awareness.
Situational awareness.
Situational awareness. You know, like, like, because it's different. You got 18 guys on the team play one sport and position, and then you get two play another. I call another sport and a position. So, unfortunately, we're out of time.
It was fun.
Again, this was a long one. It's great. If you love the podcast like we do, and want to look at maybe some of the past podcasts, you can go to our YouTube site, and also we have our primers there and our weekly assignments. And just want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.